Hiya Leeds, how are you doing? Dodging the intermittent rain, I hope. This week I have two guests. They have come to speak to me about a theatre for a new world which will be running at the Carriageworks. The week commencing 7th of June. The people who have come to speak to me are Camilla Asher and Anita Adams. I already know Camilla because we met when we were making a film at Slung Low, and she's a really good laugh. We had a great time. We went out for a drink. I think we did a bit of dancing. And she is the director of one of the plays, and Anita Adams is the creative director of the musical pieces that they'll be putting on. Have a listen, see what you think, get involved, because obviously the arts need all the help they can get. But I think you'll find them both very interesting and will enjoy the podcast. On this episode of Light on Leeds Coronavirus Extraordinary Episodes, I have Camilla Asher and Anita Adams, who have come to speak to me about Theatre for a New World. Hello, both.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thank you both for coming. Well, not really coming, remotely coming. Can you tell me a little bit about Theatre for a New World?
Yeah, sure. I think at the moment, obviously, we're working or trying to create theatre in really extraordinary ways. And over the last kind of 15 months now, we have been looking as Leeds Community Arts Network to try and engage our members in a number of different ways. That could have been master classes that we've done. We've done a Young People's Theatre Challenge. But this project is perhaps the most ambitious. So we decided we wanted to create a season of theatre that would include both our musical theatre and opera members and those of us who are dramatic and want to put on the dramas. So we've created a season that's going to be 4 shows that will be filmed live on the Carriageworks stage in 2 weeks' time, and then will be streamed as 2 full-scale musicals and 2 plays. They've been rehearsed completely on Zoom up to about a couple of weeks ago when we were allowed to rehearse in person outside, which has been quite interesting. And the reason we've chosen the material we have is that it speaks to a new world that we believe we are now starting to emerge out of. And that's kind of one of the reasons we called it Theatre for a New World, because it's been created in a new world, but we hope it will give a real hope for a potential new world that we're now coming out into.
And is that the idea of you filming them live so that people can watch them at home, because there might still be some reluctance to sort of come out to theatre performances?
That's correct, yeah. I think ideally we would have liked to have filmed them a little bit earlier, but we have stuck to all the rules and made sure it is as COVID safe as possible, both for the cast, the crew and audiences. We think that people are going to be really excited to come out to the theatre, but it might be a little bit of a trickle effect. And obviously now we are coming up to a stage where we can rehearse inside. That's still going to take a while to create performances. People are still going to need rehearsal time before we can invite an audience in. So the idea here was that we would have absolute ready shows able to be filmed and then streamed out to our audiences who may want to stay at home, but who still are not going to have an opportunity to come to a live theatre event for a little while.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Sorry, Camilla.
It was planned to be quite a lot earlier, as Anita said. So, but the sort of the lockdown and the restrictions changed that. So, I think the original goal was, it was going to be on in March when we were expecting everyone still to be stuck at home. So, obviously, the government regulations has sort of just delayed things, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And so, Anita, you are the musical director for the 2 musicals as part of this suite. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm the artistic director. The musical director is called Robert Sanders. And the team of us are professional theatre makers. We've worked in the industry. Well, I've worked in the industry now for well over 20 years. And one of the really, really important things actually about this project was that we were also employing artists.
Yeah.
Because obviously artists have been hit left, right, and centre without a lot of support, and many are out of work. So part of our commitment is to make sure that we really employ professionals to make sure that our members are getting the best possible theatrical experiences, and that includes technicians, musicians, and directors and musical directors. But the two musicals are Songs for a New World and The Last 5 Years, partially chosen because they were able to be performed with small groups. But I can't even begin to tell you how astonishingly accurate they are for the life that we are living in. You know, Songs for a New World itself has the New World title in it. It's all about people. You kind of get a snapshot into many different characters' lives. They're almost isolated. They are trying to make decisions about where to go. It has a really hopeful ending. The final song actually is called Hear My Song. And for us, that was the message of this whole thing, is that people aren't being able to hear our song and to hear live music. The Last 5 Years is a two-hander, and it's an exceptional piece of work, which follows a relationship across 5 years, and it sees them get married, and it sees it all fall apart. The absolute brilliance of the piece is that they both individual performers are in a completely different timeline. So one of them is taking the story from start to end, and one of them is taking the story from finish to beginning, and so they only actually meet in the center of the story.
All right.
It's absolutely incredible. It's an exceptionally intimate piece. And both of them are by Jason Robert Brown, who is just the most astonishing composer. We felt these pieces would really speak to our audiences in this time of isolation, and actually would give them a real sense of hope and excitement for being able to come back out of this crazy time.
Yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's exactly what we all need.
Absolutely.
Camilla, you are the director of one of the two plays. Did you choose the play for similar reasons?
No, I suppose. And Anita was involved in the whole planning of the projects. So I guess they were able to have that, whole view. Um, I suppose the main reason how I chose the plays was we knew that it needed to be socially distanced. And we, I'm one of the groups as part of Leeds Community Arts Network, LCAN, with Leeds Arts Centre, which I'm a member of, and we were just discussing. We heard about the project, and we obviously wanted to get involved, and we asked our members if anyone could recommend some plays, and one of our members put forward a play that he'd written, and it was
Oh, wow.
just a one act play. So that was the end. Neil Rathmell. We've actually put on a few, I think 2 or 3 of his plays, and he's also had one of the first play that we put on has been put on by other societies around the country. So I read that and I thought, oh, I quite like that. I could imagine directing that. So put myself forward, and that's how that began. And then we realised it was meant to be a full scale production, and that was only a short play. And at the time, I'd been reading this is a great play called Stakeout, which was about 2 detectives on a stakeout. And I was just doing something online with Leeds Arts Centre. And so I hadn't put that forward because I thought it would be overkill. But then we needed really it to be two plays. And I thought actually they do complement each other. They're not, unlike the musicals, they're not actually positive in that sense.
All right.
They both in some ways circle death, but they do have amusing. There are comedic parts in it, and the end's actually quite light-hearted. It's quite strange, but it really makes you think. And then the stakeout is I feel like it's like watching a crime drama, which randomly when you see sort of, I guess, with theatre, you often think murder mysteries, and they have a general feel and tact. Whereas this is, it's like watching something like watching something on the telly, but it's the theatre, and it's really exciting. It's got I don't want to say too much about it because there's
No.
because the style of that one, it's two detectives on the stakeout to find the Kilburn. They're going to try and catch the Kilburn killer, and they've got somebody as bait waiting, and it's sort of how that night goes on.
Oh,
And then like the
that
end,
sounds really
yeah.
interesting.
And there's some like twists and stuff. It's really the person who wrote that, I'd not really heard of him, but I did some research after, and he has like an OB or CBE in crime writing. It's a guy called Simon Brett, who has also written quite a lot of crime stuff for BBC Radio.
Ah,
I think there's Charles Paris. He's done a big series, and he did quite a lot of stuff in like the 70s and 80s as well. But yeah, I hadn't heard of him before, and then you know when you then read about someone and then they keep cropping up.
yeah.
But yeah, so yeah,
And how did?
sorry, go on.
Sorry, Camilla.
And then the other play is directed by Ken Taylor, and he's directing David Hare's Skylight.
Okay.
I don't know loads about that, but again, it's three people. I mean, one of the other reasons I think we all selected the plays was that they would work in a socially distant environment, and that they all have quite small numbers. I've got three in the end and two in Stakeout, and he's got three in Skylight. So David Hare's quite well known. So hopefully people will
I think Skylight
recognise that.
kind of, it really speaks to a similar audience as the last 5 years, in that it is a intimate look at a relationship. And I feel like that is something everybody's going to relate to at the moment, because we've all had to relook at our relationships and think, you know, we've all been isolated within them for quite a while, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, you know, even though the plays potentially don't have a positive subject matter, I think the positivity comes from the fact that everybody's going to resonate with some of the analysis, with some of the things that are happening, which is really, really exciting.
Was it quite interesting for both of you then? Because I presume that you've done this kind of thing in the past. So when you were thinking about, like Camilla said, the social distancing aspect, was it sort of limiting, or did you find it interesting to look for plays and musicals that fit within, you know, the COVID, and was that quite fun to do, or did you find that difficult?
I think a bit of both, to be honest. I think the reason the project was created is that we feel at Leeds Community Arts Network, and something I'm massively passionate about, and possibly timely, being given that we are living, it's Mental Health Week this week, isn't it? Is
Yeah.
that our members and all of us, especially artists, especially creatives, were feeling really isolated at this time.
Hmm.
And looking after the mental health of our members, as well as our artists that work with us and the people who need to be paid through this profession, and even the buildings and everything that we were worried about, became a primary concern. So we thought, we're going to have to do something. And this was not the only project, it's just kind of the final one, really, to keep engaging people. So the looking for shows, and even for, you know, when we talked to Camilla and to Ken and to Leeds Arts Centre, and the idea of putting on a new play was something that was really exciting, especially given that it was written by one of our members, was
Yeah.
about how many people can we actually involve while being social distance? Can we make sure that our audiences are all well and happy at the same time? And can we create pieces that people are going to love to sit at home and watch and feel like actually the theatre is still there, it's still working, it's still happening? So there was kind of an awful lot of boxes in a way that we wanted to tick. So the musicals, I think, were pretty easy to come across because we've known them for a long time. And to be honest, it's been a bit of a dream show of mine to do. And something we would never have done because we would never do shows that were so small, because we'd like to engage more people.
Yeah.
But actually, when we look at the amount of people that this has engaged, even throughout the difficulties of trying to technically rehearse it, it's been really, really good. And I think some of the things that we thought were barriers became exciting and new, and it was and I think the one thing that our members are going to get out of it is they're performing for film, which is different to what they're used to, and an opportunity they wouldn't have ordinarily been given because they would always perform in a live theatre. So they've had a whole new set of skills there. As director, and I'm sure Camilla will echo this, it's hard to rehearse over Zoom. I mean, it's very impersonal. Certainly for an ensemble music piece, we have only heard the group sing the ensemble pieces live over the past 2 weeks, because obviously over Zoom you can't sing together because the time delay just doesn't allow for it. So it works really well actually when you're doing solo pieces of work, because it actually intensifies it a little bit and focuses it. So I don't think I would mind doing online rehearsals a little bit moving forward, but once you get into the ensemble scenes, it's really, really difficult. And what we were having to do was record everybody singing between rehearsals. They were having to record themselves. Then we would put it together so that they could hear what it sounded like together, and we could hear where some of the gaps were. And only by doing that could we hear the improvement, to be honest. But there is nothing like the absolute rush and excitement of getting a cast together and allowing them to sing as an ensemble. And when we were able to do that a couple of weeks ago, there were tears. Because it is a really emotional thing.
And has that been the same for you, Camilla?
Yeah, we found. Well, I think obviously because we don't have an ensemble and we don't have the issues with the singing. The rehearsals at first on Zoom, I thought, this is actually working quite well. It's quite good because the pieces stakeout's quite dialogue heavy. We purposely sort of chose that. There's not loads of movement. They're not super close to each other, so that was all part of why it was a suitable piece to select. But and I was like, yeah, these are coming on, and both pieces they were coming on great, but obviously we were imagining the moves. We've discussed the moves, but we were imagining them. And then finally, when we've been rehearsing in my work car park, and it was a massive step back, and like I remember Enya from Stakeout sort of going, I think I've forgotten how to act and move, and the lines had been great on Zoom, and then because they were having to then move, and it took I remember the first rehearsal for the end, and it's only about half an hour, and it took us 2.5 hours to go through it because we were putting the moves that we'd already discussed, but it was just finalizing it and getting the little tweaks, and then and so I feel we've just now, after say however long, about 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks, that I feel that we've actually began to get back to where we were when we were on Zoom, but now obviously with the movements. So I've got a double rehearsal tomorrow, again at my work. But yeah, it's really coming on now, and it was like Anita said, when we actually got to be together and it started to gel, you get like that really excited fuzzy feeling, like yes, this is going to be really good. So yeah, it's really nice, and I think Pam. She's one of the actresses in The End, and she's been doing this type of professional and non-professional stuff for probably like 40-50 years or something. And she was desperate for us to get together. I think she was maybe the concentration wasn't there in the same way when we were on Zoom, I think. And it's been really nice seeing all like the nuances coming out of her characters over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, because I suppose when you're doing it on Zoom, you can't sort of relate to each other quite the same as you can in real life, and sort of see each other's
Yeah.
body language and respond to cues quite as well. So it sounds like you've had quite a challenging time, but you've both managed to pull it off. So well done.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yeah, it was,
And
stakeout, because it's just the two of them, and there is actually, quite a lot of eye contact, and even in the end, there's a particular bit where I'm like, remember, eye contact, just imagine. It was like, yeah.
And can I ask you both how you got involved in the first place in theatre? Is it something that you've both always been interested in?
Yeah, well, for me, it's always been my career. It's always been my life. I trained in theatre when Bretton Hall was still here. That's
Oh
where
yeah.
I went to college and took specialisms there in directing theatre and using theatre as an intervention. For me, theatre has a power to change people's lives. I really have seen that, and I've seen it save people's lives. And I've worked with theatre as a tool for engagement and healing for my whole career. And I think that's why this time in particular has been so devastating for the theatre industry, because it's not a luxury, in my opinion. It's not, the creative arts is not something we should just have as an extra. I believe it to be fundamental. And if we think about all the things that have helped us through this period, it would be music, it would be TV, it would be film. And all of that is not available unless we create, unless people can get together and do awesome things. And I've worked in prisons, I've worked with young people on the edge of education, I've worked with community groups, I've worked with professionals, but theatre is, and all of the creative arts actually, in whatever you are, is a life-changing thing to be involved with. And for me, that is at the heart of everything we do. Is it accessible to everybody? Can everybody get something out of it? And how, we will constantly work to make that happen. And I'm really proud, actually, of some of the things we've managed to keep doing throughout this time, because I feel that, well, I certainly feel myself, I would have been completely lost without some of these. And I know that is the case for some of our members and young people that we've been working with.
Yeah. And how about you, Camilla?
So this isn't my profession, I suppose. This is my passion. So I did theatre studies at A level, and then didn't really do much for probably about 10 years. And then when I was living about, I don't know now, about 12, 13 years ago, I wanted to re-pick it back up, and I joined Leeds Arts Centre. And it took a few years of being that in little plays and this, that, and the other, and helping a bit backstage. And then I directed my first play in 2014, and I loved it, and it was great. And then I ended up actually doing another play and directing another play 6 months later, because there was a gap, and I was like, got the bug, I suppose. And then since then, I mean, I love the theatre. I go to the theatre a lot, so yeah, it's been a strange time. I mean, I suppose in some ways also why this project was quite nice is I have been streaming various theatre stuff online. Me and my friends will all watch it at home, at a set time, and then we'll meet up afterwards on Zoom and discuss it. So we're trying to replicate as close as we can the theatre experience. And I was meant to actually direct a play July last year, and obviously I actually just auditioned and cast it just before we went into lockdown. And I'm worried actually whether I'm jinxed, because just after we cast Theatre for a New World, we went into lockdown, and so I'm like, oh no. but yeah, so I really like directing. I've done three plays with Leeds Arts Centre, and a few other bits with other groups, I suppose. But like my main thing is with Leeds Arts Centre, and yeah, I just really love it. And I suppose as I was meant to be directing dinner, and then it went from July to October, and then obviously then question mark. It's now I'm going to do that in February. And so it made natural sense for me to say, right, well, I'll do this because I was sort of mentally ready to direct anyway, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. And I think it's a great idea that people are going to be able to access it online, because one of the things that I've found during lockdown is, I tend to oversubscribe myself for all sorts of events anyway and double book myself. But what's been nice is being able to have the time to fit in some ways, more activities during this time, because there was so much available online that, for example, the Leeds Literary Fest, I'd never managed to get to any of their events in real life pre-COVID, but I managed to get to sort of 3 or 4 different talks while we're online, because it was much
Mm-hmm.
easier. It's not like you're having to travel somewhere and take time into account and all things like that. So I think it's great, because there might be a lot of people who might have access problems, and
Agreed.
this kind of thing makes theatre more available to people in their homes.
Yeah, and I think that moving forward, actually, the one good thing that's come out of this is the creative thinking around what technology actually can give us.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, does it open things up? Does it mean that you can do slightly? I mean, the next thing that will go into the theatre after us is one of our other groups, called Lidos. They're doing a bit of a hybrid. They're going to do live performance with a 50% audience, but also stream it to people who are not quite ready to come back to the theatre at the same time. So
Yeah.
there's an option there. You can do both, and maybe that's something we should think about moving forward.
Mm.
Maybe doing some online rehearsals first is really good for people, because they haven't got to worry about parking costs, or
Yeah.
having to get out of their house during the winter time. I don't know. I think there's going to be some really good creative thinking in this sector, just about how much more we could be a little bit more accessible to everyone, actually.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
would um I would agree. I think that I would potentially do some of like the discussion and even the initial, but where you just the delivery of your lines, you can do that on Zoom. And in
Mm.
some ways, because you can't move, you're completely focusing, on that, and it actually makes for the character development and better acting. And then additionally, also, I think the we Leeds Arts Centre, we've done various activities throughout the month. We've had at least we have a play reading every other week, and then we had like another social activity at the end of the month. And at the beginning, we also had one on. So we actually had 4 activities, so one a week. And as things opened up a bit, we relaxed things. But I've noticed there are certain members that come to that haven't come to as many play readings. I think
Mm.
because if they're a parent, then they can't really, if they're a single parent, they can't, they need to arrange someone to look after the children if they're coming into town. There was someone else again on the accessibility. So, and then alternatively, there's been a number that haven't come because they've basically been on the computer all day at work, so they don't want to then do it in their
Yeah.
evenings. But so you get both sides. But I do think it's something that, yeah, we shouldn't. Once we can go and meet back in person, we shouldn't completely lose the sort of the online meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And can I ask, have you both always lived in Leeds? Camilla, can I ask you?
No, I moved to Leeds in 2002. I think I'm originally from South Manchester near Stockport, and then I went to university in Newcastle, and then I moved to Leeds. But I've actually now been in Leeds longer than I was lived anywhere else, so
Yeah, I'm the
including my
same.
hometown. Yeah, so I'm, whilst I'm not originally from here, I'm fully rooted here in my heart.
Yeah,
So
of course. And how about you, Anita?
No, I'm from Birmingham. Again, came here. I feel like Yorkshire just swallows you up actually when you come.
Yeah.
Came here for university in 1997. Graduated in 2000, and apart from a few stints working in London, I've never left.
So that means that you're both perfectly capable to answer the three questions that I ask every Let on Leeds guest. The first one being, what would you say is great about the city? If I can ask you first, Camilla.
I really like the compactness of it all. So if you want to uh, go drinking or socializing, you can walk around the whole of Leeds. You can get from the bottom to the top without being knackered, without needing a rest. You can you can take your pick of the bars. Like when I grew up in Manchester, obviously I was young, I didn't go out quite as much, but it's so spaced out that you can't just you have to sort of decide, right, well, we're going to that area, whereas
Yeah.
you can just, and the same with the shops in Leeds. I haven't been shopping for like a year and a half, but if when you want to, everything's just compact, and then not far out of the city you've got so much lovely like green space. So you just get like the best of the country and the city.
Yeah, definitely. And how about you, Anita? What would you say is great?
Well, apart from the fact that I think you get sucked into it, otherwise I don't think we'd all be here. And I think some of that is to do with just the innate friendliness, I would say, that kind of Leeds and Yorkshire as a whole, actually. It feels like home, which is a very strange thing for somebody who this was not my home, but as soon as I got here, it felt more home than home was, if that makes sense. But from a mum point of view and from a family point of view, I actually think Leeds is really family focused.
Yeah.
And I think there's an awful lot that families can do. And that's not just activities that you have to pay for, although that they are really exciting to be able to go to some of those things, but just the amount of green space there is, the amount of parks, the amount of museums, the amount of things that you can actually access for free
Yeah.
is really wonderful. And we never run out of things. My boys are both home educated, they always have been. And we never run out of places to go or things to do. And I think that's one of the reasons that I've stayed and love it so much.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And Camilla, if you had to choose something that you think is not so great about the city of Leeds, what would you choose?
Oh, I don't know.
On the spot.
Uh, well, I suppose you could say homelessness. Well, that applies to, I think, many cities, and actually Leeds
Yeah.
isn't as bad as some. But I do feel since the lockdown side of things, I haven't seen as many homeless people. But I suppose homelessness, just because I don't really know. But homelessness isn't a good, it's a bad thing in general, and yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And you do see a lot of it in Leeds. And what would you say, Anita?
So my thing is something that I've been battling with, I think, since I came to Leeds, and my first jobs were always in what we would call the deprived areas of Leeds. It
Yeah.
was always places like Seacroft or Armley or Beeston, and to my mind, I don't ever feel that it's gotten better in a way. And I feel like, you get these, you can drive in Leeds from one of the poorest areas into one of the richest areas within about a second.
Yeah.
And I feel that the integration between those, especially culturally, needs to be better. I
Hmm.
think actually it's a culturally rich city. We've got an awful lot of amazing culture and creativity, but I don't think we mix it very well. I still don't think we've nailed is everything accessible to everyone? And do we really understand who our neighbours are? I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, do you know that comes up quite a lot when I ask this question, and I was lucky enough to do an interview with Cully, who's the director of Leeds 2023, and I raised
Yes,
that with her.
yeah,
Yeah, and that is something that they are looking at, because that's some
yes.
feedback that they've had. For example, I mean, I live in Beeston. Beeston's very similar to Hare Hills in lots of ways. Hare
Mm,
Hills has its own cultural things going on. Beeston has its own things. But yeah,
mm.
I see it would be nice to feel like everything was a little bit linked and not sort of siloed.
Yes, 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 yes.
And if you had to choose something that you would consider to be a hidden gem that somebody might have lived in Leeds for all of their life, but they might never have heard of it, what would you suggest, Camilla?
Well, only because it's, I think, the best music venue in Leeds, possibly UK. So it is the Breedonell Social. I do think, though, it's actually quite well known. But I guess if you don't go to that many concerts, you might not have heard of it. I think
Yeah,
artists love playing there. I even noticed recently Tom Jones is actually playing at the Breedonell Social, so that
I
would be.
saw that.
I think the tickets sold out in about, obviously, record speed.
Seconds.
Yeah, but obviously it's such an intimate venue, and and they've expanded and got, obviously, about a few years ago they opened a community room, and the sound quality is great, the atmosphere is great, the drinks are cheap, the ticket prices are reasonable. They have great bands. It's just they have some really good, like, all day music events, like on a weekend. Like a local beer festival.
I'm
It's
noticing that
just
all of Camilla's recommendations are based around drink. Are we seeing this? She hasn't been out
drink.
for a
I
while.
don't have children. Drink. Socializing is a big part of positive mental health. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I'd probably say the Brood and Ale Social.
I think that's a great choice, Camilla. And Anita, what would you choose?
So I'm going to give a little plug to the beautiful Yeadon Town Hall, which I feel is actually really well known on that side of Leeds,
Yeah,
but we wouldn't necessarily think of it across the whole of Leeds as a brilliant venue. And what's important about it is that it's a community-led venue now. It was handed over to the community to look after.
yeah.
It's had a major refurbishment by the community and the person that runs it, and it looks just beautiful now. In terms of how the historical building is being looked after, the interior just looks stunning. It's worth visiting just for that. But also it's a beautiful venue. Camilla, you'll be pleased to know that the pub's been redone in there. It's now called the Tavern, and it's much more of an open music live venue in its own right. But also the theatre itself is beautiful. It's well used by the community around there, but I don't feel like its pull is citywide, and it deserves to be, especially because it's in a bit of a use it or lose it situation at the moment, given that it's quite a big theatre venue but has received literally no funding at all
Oh no.
through any of the government schemes, despite everybody's best efforts. So at the moment it's in a lot of trouble, and I think if we were to lose it, it would be a huge, huge hole in the art scene for Leeds.
Yeah, definitely. And I always ask guests if they have a Leeds-based musician or band, a track that they would like to feature. And Anita, you have chosen a track. You have gone for "Dance for God." Is it the soundtrack to a previous theatre production?
No, was this the reason? The reason I'm doing this is because it's really quite funny. Because this is written by, and I think it's not a band. It is Leeds-based composer and lyricist James Sidgwick and Robert Sanders. Now, Robert Sanders is a musical director for our musicals in Theatre for a New World. Incredible musician. And he and James are Leeds-based musical theatre writers. And I actually think there's some really great outlets for bands, and there's some really great outlets for band management, for getting out. There's a lot of venues for you to go and perform if you're in a band. But actually, if you're a writing team, it is really quite difficult
Yeah.
to get your musicals out and about. It's an exceptionally expensive thing to have to do to produce a piece of musical theatre. Unless you've got support behind you, it's difficult. Now, what's funny about this, and the reason I thought it would be a funny little conclusion, is it's from a musical called Plague, which seems appropriate. Now,
Really does.
unfortunately, it was postponed because of COVID. So the
Oh.
hilarity of having a musical, a comic musical, I have to say, that was due to go on in the Carriageworks Theatre, postponed at the beginning of an actual pandemic was an irony that wasn't lost on us. But it will be performed in September of this year. So it's very exciting. It's supposed to be funny. And I feel actually like it might just be the giggle that everybody requires when we come out of this. But the musical is called Plague. It's brand new. It will be performed on the Carriageworks stage in September and was cancelled because of a pandemic. Brilliant. So I thought people might like to hear a bit of it.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely perfect. And can I ask you, Camilla, what will you be doing with the rest of your day today?
I've actually got a meeting with Ken, the other director, this afternoon, just to discuss whether we've got a crossover in set and a few bits like that. And I've taken the afternoon off, so I might catch up with a few friends and do a bit of theatre AOB, so to speak.
And what about you, Anita? What will you be doing for the rest of the day?
Well, my gorgeous boys are downstairs. They've been very quiet throughout all of this.
They've been very good, haven't they?
I know. Well, either that or downstairs is complete chaos. They've actually been making worry monsters today, which is really cute because we've been focusing on Mental Health Week this week in their educational adventures. So I'm going to go and see how they're doing. They've got drama class later. So it's mum duty basically for the rest of the day. And then I'll have a little bit of prep and work to do before all my rehearsals and teachings this weekend.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so very much for remotely connecting to tell me about Theatre for a New World. I will make sure to put lots of links in the podcast notes so that people can click through and get involved, get tickets, get out there, and or stay at home and see you. So thank you so much. And I think I'm supposed to say break a leg.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just a final note just to say if people could support it, you are supporting community theatre across Leeds, and that is an incredibly important thing. It's only $7.50 for one of the shows. There's a season ticket for all 4 if you fancy watching all of them. But any support you can give to this fabulous project is going to support theatre moving forward in Leeds City Centre, and that can only be a good thing.
Of course.
Can we just also mention? Can we just mention the dates? So it's the first one is streamed. The first musical streamed week commencing the 7th of June, and then effectively it's for the next 4 weeks. So we've got musical, play, musical. So
brilliant. That's
tickets
great.
Tickets are available at the Carriageworks box office online. You can buy them now to be streamed in that week, any time of your convenience.
Yeah, which is another great way to do it, isn't it? You can watch it whenever you like. Yeah, thank you so much, both. Best of luck. I'll try myself to get myself some tickets because I would love to see what it is that you've been working on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Brilliant to talk to Anita and Camilla and Theatre for a New World, which just sounds like a fantastic series. As usual, there will be links in the podcast notes so that you can book to see the performances, either in person or from the comfort of your own home. The song that Anita chose is Dance for God by James Sigdwick and Robert Sanders. It's a brilliant song. It's really funny. And if you wanted to listen to the whole of the soundtrack from the upcoming play Plague, you can do so on Spotify. And once again, I'll put in the links. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and I will speak to you soon. Goodbye. What's happening in this great city? We'll tell you. Wait a minute.
When faced with despair all around, the truly devoted hold their ground. Categorically prove your faith in him. In Bogsfield we have missed the mark. There's a leak inside our ark. And now it is time that you learn to swim. We must do something, a way we can show God Almighty the faith that we need him to know.
How to show the Lord we are desperate and downtrod. What more can we offer him?
You dance and dance for God. Move your feet in time. You dance and dance for God. Grab hold of your fellow man and dance for God. When you dance together as one whole, you can redeem your immortal soul. Shake off this curse and break this spell.
Shake off this curse and break this spell.
When he sees you, he'll rejoice. His faithful subjects make their choice, and he will save us from this hell.
And he will save us from this hell. Move our feet in time, although it might seem odd. Show our faith through movement and dance for God. Left, right, forward, back, what the hell, it's worth a try. We dance and dance for God before we all die.
Salvation within your grips. He filters his flock through apocalypse. If you want to survive, then your only chance is to dance.
We must do all we can, this devout and loyal squad. To show our faith and loyalty, we dance and dance for God. How to show the Lord.
You're desperate and downtrodden. What more you dance and dance for God. Dance for God.
Feet in time, although it might seem odd. Show our faith through movement and dance for God.
Move your hands, give him respect. Get to the ground and genuflect. And dance.
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 Show the Lord we need his help and dance for
Show the Lord
God.
we need his help and dance.